Joe Pfaff, thank you for joining us. We have Joe Pfaff with us from Husco. Joe, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do at Husco and uh, how Husco fits into the automotive supply chain?
Yeah, happy to join you today. Um, Husco is a manufacturer of off-highway and automotive components. We sell hydraulic and actuator controls for companies like Caterpillar, Ford Motor Company, Stellantis, C&H, kind of every big model you can think of on the highway or off the highway. We have some sort of product going into those customers.
Yeah, what can you give us a feel for how big you are? How big a
We're
company
about
Husco is?
Yeah, Husco is about a $500 million organization with about 1,500 employees worldwide. We have our headquarters here in Waukesha, Wisconsin, with facilities in Whitewater, Maquoketa, Iowa, just outside of Manchester, UK, in addition to Pune, India, and Shanghai, China.
So a global company, relatively large size for a Wisconsin manufacturer, and you're the vice president of global business technology. What does that mean? What does that role entail?
Yeah, it basically means I'm the IT guy. We have two major initiatives within my responsibility. One of them is running our IT group, which is everything from the laptops to the cloud services to the data analytics. And then our other big initiative is updating our ERP solution, which is a little bit long in the tooth, and we're making our way through the organization.
So how'd you get started with AI there, both you personally and then the company more in general?
So we've had a couple of investigations into what AI could do for us in the last 3 or 4 years, some of it around vision systems. So from a quality perspective, we use vision quite commonly in our manufacturing operations to ensure that the parts are either manufactured by individuals or manufactured by robotics correctly. Those advances have been significant. And then within the last year, along with everybody else in the world, as soon as ChatGPT took the world by storm, we became very interested in what it could mean for our knowledge workers around the world.
And then how'd you start to explore it? How'd you start figuring out, what makes sense?
So we didn't know what to do at first. So what we did was just trial and error, quite honestly, from the very start. We established some do's and don'ts for the organization to really protect our confidential information and make sure we didn't get over our skis in trying to adopt this and use it in our business practices. But at first it was pretty fluid and somewhat open-ended because we weren't sure what to do with it. But we were not overly afraid of it in the sense that we didn't want to preclude people from using it, but we want to be a little bit cautious in how much we encourage people to use it. And one of the things that we did after the initial euphoria in January, February, March is we established a 70-person group to evaluate the Bing chat tools in particular, which were fueled by the same underlying engine from OpenAI. And we asked these 70 people to use the tools as frequently as they could in their regular business activities and see what their results were for fidelity of the results, the improvement in productivity, and what use cases gave the most value. And those 70 people were from around the world in all of the different functional areas of our business. And then after the 3-month trial had finished, we surveyed the group on the results. And the results varied, as you would expect. So users who asked the Bing chat tool, which is powered by the same engine as ChatGPT, the users that asked more questions, who used it more frequently, had better productivity results. So, direct correlation between using it more got more benefit. The other question that we asked users was about the fidelity of the answers. And here we saw variation. The best fidelity of answers came from language generation and software assistance. So language generation would be, write me a job description for a particular role, or write me a marketing piece on a particular piece of technology. Whereas a technical software ask of the AI tools might have been, I have this Excel problem and I want a solution for it. or maybe something in our embedded software, or something that the IT group maybe would use. Those answers were very, very accurate and very much improved the productivity of users that had that sort of a use case. If the users were looking for something that was maybe historical or high dependency on context, the accuracy of the answers weren't quite as crisp. So we found those to be less beneficial from a productivity standpoint. And in general, users got between 0 and 10% productivity advantage in their use of the tools. So some got very little, but those were also users that asked less questions. And the people that asked the most questions and had the use case of language generation or some sort of software assistance saw up to 10%. And again, this was early days. Nobody was really familiar with it. So we were learning, the tools were getting better. So those sorts of numbers are only going to get better as time goes on and the proliferation into other tools within our normal workday expand year over year.
So how'd you measure that productivity? You said you got up to 10% improvement. Was it
Yeah,
self-assessed? Was there some measure involved?
there wasn't. We asked, right? We had 70 people trial the tools. About 30 people responded, so a reasonable good sample size. But in the end, we asked them to record when they used it and how much time it saved them. But we didn't do a full analytical test. Now, MIT and Stanford have recently done a test, and for controlled studies, they've found between 15 to 25% productivity advantage for common office activities. And those are pretty big numbers. And I tend to believe they're possible. Getting those sorts of numbers across an entire organization is an entirely different thing because of the variation in work activities and individuals' comfort using a computer or AI tools. But I think with the tools that are available out there today, if fully exploited with somebody who's really comfortable with them, those are not off the chart numbers. I think those are possible in a lot of different domains.
Yeah, so where are you getting the most traction with that? What function or what activities are people seeing the most benefit?
Yeah, today I would say it's functions like the management group, our deep technical group, software, IT professionals, and HR. If you think of the language generation requirements that exist in HR or in our marketing groups, those are the areas that probably today are seeing the most benefit from the tools. I do see that changing, however, today or in the very near future with the expansion of the AI tools within our regular office tools that everybody uses with email or video collaboration or work management. The AI tools are finding their way into these additional tools, and I think that's when the benefit is going to become more widespread across all the different functional areas, including finance and engineering and operations and supply chain.
So are you using it all on the production floor?
Not specifically, but we have a couple of use cases that we're interested in moving forward. One of them is expanding our image analysis for quality defect recognition. And the other is using some of the video analysis to facilitate operators not having to touch a keyboard and a mouse to interact with their computer. So gesture interfaces. You can think about gesture interfaces that were common with video games, but using those maybe in the plant floor in non-safety critical interfaces and communication between a computer and somebody working in a manufacturing environment.
I mean, having been in your facility, I mean, it's a highly automated facility, and how are you anticipating that linking into some of that automation, if at all?
Yeah, it's really related to the operator, although our facilities are very automated, certainly the manufacturing of our product and our automotive manufacturing is, the vast majority is automated. But users are still interfacing with the computer systems and facilitating a lot of the material handling. So there's still an exchange of information between the user and the automation that we can imagine gesturing and kind of being able to have the computer recognize the intention of the operator to communicate something to the automation system. And then more in the office environment would be applying analytics from the AI tools to facilitate better supply chain operations, better predicting our inventory, better managing our supply chain order quantities. Those aren't here today, but within the year, I would not be surprised by those sorts of AI tools working in all of those functional areas.
Yeah. So you mentioned before do's and don'ts. What are some examples of those, and how are you using those?
Yeah, so we're sharing with our teams what tools to use. So for instance, we direct all of our staff to use the Microsoft tools, not because their performance is maybe the best, but they provide the information security that we want to maintain around our business data. Now, we still ask users not to share confidential information, nothing about pricing, nothing related to our technology innovations. But that's really out of an abundance of caution. The way the Microsoft tools are structured, they really protect our data pretty well, whereas some of the other third-party tools don't have that same level of protection. So one is we direct people to specific tools. And then the other is we suggest use cases that we know are most successful from our initial 70-person trial, right? If you're doing language generation or if you're doing software development, those are great places to start where you're going to get a lot of value, high fidelity results, and productivity gains. Whereas some of the other areas maybe haven't matured or the tools haven't caught up with the technology yet. On the don't side, I already mentioned confidentiality. We also ask people not to pay for special tools or install special tools. And the last one, from a security standpoint, is a note of caution really around the potential for some of these AI tools to begin using someone's voice as a source of exfiltration of data or asking someone to do something from a money standpoint. So our recommendation to the organization is if you receive a call and you think you recognize the voice and they're asking you to do something, the only way really to know who that person is on the other end of the phone is to call them back from a number you know to confirm it is that individual calling you. So AI is powerful for doing good, and there's lots of terrific potential in our organization, as individuals, in our country, and in the world, but it also can be used for bad actors. And so being a little bit cautious, and now we have to raise our awareness of how do we trust people coming through these different digital pathways.
So, is there a favorite application that you've either done yourself or you've seen that you really like or you found was particularly innovative?
The language and software work I use every week, and I have almost come to the point where I can't imagine doing some work activities without the AI helping out. The one that was amazing though, and just spun my head was the image generation capabilities, whether it be from the Microsoft tools or the other tools. The quality of the output and the creativity in it was, I had reserved that capacity for human brain power, but here a computer was doing really an amazing job at it in near real-time response to my queries. So although it doesn't serve Husco a great big business purpose to generate AI images, that capacity was striking.
In any of this, I mean, one of the things that causes me to be a little nervous about this is when, when the software hallucinates, right? It's trying to answer my query and be really helpful, and so it just goes down a path that maybe isn't true but is predictive as to what I'm asking for. Have you run into any whoppers like that?
We have, and so one of the do's that I amongst our do's and do-nots that I did not mention, one of the do's we have is always double check the sources and never use AI as a final work product, right? Use it as a draft, use it as a generation of ideas, use it as a counterpoint source, but never use it for your final work product. I do like the tools that are out there that include citations, because then if you want to know some of the source information that was included in the AI's response, you can dig in deeper and check some of those citations. But the source of bias, delusions, oftentimes relates to data fidelity, right? The AI system learned something along the way that was untrue,
Yeah.
and it echoed it back to the user with that query. So one of the things that we're doing right now is we are trying to get as much of our data from a number of disparate systems into one common system so that when we get to the point of wanting to point a Husco AI at our Husco data, that we have one source that it is harvesting data from with a minimum amount of conflict and misinformation to try to minimize the bias or hallucinations that we might get when we eventually create a Husco GPT. So right now we're not as much creating AI tools for ourselves as working to prepare our data set so that when we get to that point, when the tools are more freely available and easy to build up, that our data set is ready for AI.
So what's immediately next? Where's this going next? You talked about building up the database, but are there specific applications or specific channels that you're pursuing more aggressively than others?
So short term, the data work is probably number one right now. Number two is we, as I mentioned, want to be early adopters of the commercially available tools. And Microsoft and others are now integrating their AI tools into the daily work productivity tools, right? Excel, Outlook, Teams, PowerPoint, or the competitors from Google. We are going to be evaluating that probably for the next couple of months with a similar sample size to our 70 that we did with the interactive chatting style AI. To see what these tools can do for our work experience, right? How we work with our colleagues and our external stakeholders every day, and what sort of improvement in the fidelity and speed of our activities is through using the tools in our everyday work. And I'm excited about what that will show us. I suspect there will be some things that exceed our expectations, some that might fall short.
Yeah.
But I expect that experience will refine our use of the tools in our daily work, our daily knowledge work here at Husco. And I wouldn't be surprised by the end of the year if all of us were using AI um, every day for a meaningful portion of our days to really accelerate the value that we create.
You know, the technology is moving so fast right now, and it's always just a challenge to keep up to date. I don't know, do you have any tips around that? How do you try to keep up to date with where all of this is going?
It's probably impossible to stay up to date. You almost want to be a month behind because it's just easier, right? Let the dust settle after the initial explosion of information. There are a lot of great sources out there, different YouTube channels that I've found, certainly our software vendors. And then as I'm sure most have networks of colleagues within their industry to share best practices. So it's a little bit of all of those as we navigate forward. Our strategy for a Husco standpoint is to not be on the bleeding edge, but being an early adopter. Because it's probably where the value proposition and the differentiation exist. But there is not a great single source of clear guidance on how to navigate forward. And I suspect what we know today is probably only useful for a couple months, and that'll change in 3 to 6 months, and it'll change again in 9 to 12 months. And it'll probably be that way for another year or two, and then it'll begin stabilizing again.
So if I'm just starting out on this journey, what tips would you give me? I mean, what would you tell me to do first? How would you tell me to approach AI and getting myself up the curve?
Well, I'll tell you a similar thing that we did when we started the 70-person group using the interactive tools today, the chat GPTs or the Bing chat. And that was in the past, most of us looked at search engines as a way, like going to the library, you would tell you where the book was, right? But then you had to do additional research and click on some links and do some more research to get to the answer you wanted. So calling them search tools was the exact right phrase for it. Whereas these AI tools are really an answer tool, right? You ask it a question and it gives you an answer. And that answer is oftentimes really good. Sometimes it isn't, like I cited before, but oftentimes if it's language-based or technology-based, it's an exceptionally accurate answer. And so cutting out that searching, finding, and prospecting and getting to an answer and getting some practice at it personally is probably the best way to get started, because then you'll learn how to navigate this knowledge space productively. No different than all of us learned how to do searching proficiently 15, 20 years ago when Alta Vista and some of these other tools were out first, and then Google ended up getting dominant. But all of us became really good at searching. And so now we have to get really good at using AI. And there's really no good replacement for trial and error.
Yeah.
But I would encourage people, if they could first get frustrated, they have maybe a first bad experience or a second one, keep working it. There is value there. It's a little bit of us learning how to engage the AI tools and find those value pockets that inevitably are going to continue to expand. But find those pockets and then use that as a starting point to expand from.
That's great. So for folks watching this segment, what's the one or two things you want them to take away from our conversation?
It's a repeat of what I just said. I think really trying it is the best thing to do. Do it with a cohort, do it with some colleagues, compare notes, and refine your vision of how this can create value for you and your organization. Um, Caution is appropriate, but I think this will fundamentally change the way we work, and we will look back 5 years from now on today and how we in our organization reacted. And we'll remember this story that we're starting to tell today. So I would lean into it with caution. But I think the only mistake that one can really make is ignoring it.
Good advice, Joe. Really appreciate the time with you today. Thank you, Joe Pfaff from Husco. He's the Vice President of Global Business Technology. Best of luck. We
Thank you very
appreciate the
much.
time.
Thank you very much.